Welcome, everybody, to Mud Flood was Armageddon. The Mud Flood was the Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. I'm having such a difficult time with my audio, and it doesn't make any sense. It's something now, maybe. Did anybody hear me say, welcome everybody to Mud Flood was Armageddon? Mud Flood was Armageddon. It's a flat earth nation. The golden age is past. Uh, I have no intent of unaliving myself or getting myself kicked off of YouTube, but I do want people to know what I'm going to say tonight. I'm going to show a disclaimer. I'm going forward as on record, believing I am the end time prophet, Alan Paco, who brought the world what God gave me through vision questing, short season theology, mud flood was Armageddon, the stones are reserved in judgment. They could have cried out if a prophecy wasn't fulfilled. I've spent tons on computers and parts trying to get rid of echoes and everything else. And today the computer just stopped. But when I unplugged it, it turned back on just by disconnecting the power. So much problem. But even if I have to play the videos and turn it off, I'm going to do my best to do that because we have to get through this. Let me do what I can with the. Okay, I gotta realize I have to share the screen because I had to restart the computer. I had to restart the stream like 3 times to get this thing going. Oh man. Here's the disclaimer. They love it. They gotta have it. But I'm disclaiming, you can go see their doctors all you want. I think like the thumbnail shows, and they've proven the ventilators, everything else, to stand 6 feet. It was Trump and Anthony Fauci. Somehow they're rich and Biden pardoned him, and they were going to retroactive. No, there's no pardons for that. Well, yeah, I guess there is. We got some pictures. John Dee's life. King Arthur's story. If you want to know about people who go to the North Pole and believe in the hagiographies and the Mercator and stuff, it's these guys. It's the knuckleheads that want to take you to King Arthur. They've been doing it for years. This is new, but they've been doing it for years. No, it was never safe, but it was effective for what they wanted. We'll look at some of these believers caught off guard, like in Matthew 24. They're teaching. These are the people. I was a part of this world for 35 years. The partial preterism, full preterism, post-millennial, dominion theology. This is the worst. Maybe I'll have to come back to this, but all of these are saying, we who are alive and remain will be caught up when this happens. They were waiting for it. It wasn't that, oh, this was for those people at that time, but now we're waiting for this, for the millennium to start. Preterist and full preterist, partial preterist, that's a Jesuit theology. I was sucked into it. So they have pages and pages where they're just comparing it. They don't get it. Christ to come. Well, they're still waiting in 1 Corinthians. They were waiting for the sound of the trumpet. I don't even think they're trying. Hola. And it's good to see you guys. Thank you. Thank you for watching that. Appreciate it. Let's check this out. We're going to be getting into Matthew 24. It's pulled up. Daniel 12. It's ready to go. I've looked up the word barracks and castles for their camp of the saint. But the main takeaway is from the Boston Marathon to Charlie Kirk to Butler, PA, with the big fake assassination of President Trump. That's my opinion. That whole fight, fight, fight. And now Candace Owen, the Roman Catholic saint that's bringing true Christianity to the world, has found the guy that implicates the Erica Kirk turning point with a folding AR 15. First one ever that could fold up and fit in a backpack. And the Franzes, Erica Kirk, Turning Point, they're invested heavily in it. They're showing today. The Boston Marathon is out. Remember Ruby Ridge, Waco. All of those things are true. Oklahoma City bombing. We never doubted that, the truth would come out. We thought people would be mad, but it's God's timing. And it's now. Everything's coming out, and Rome is getting the credit. The only pedophiles in the world are the government. It's not the fact that all the rest of my life, it was the pedophile priest from Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Thomas Massey, others names are slipping my mind, are being propped up as the great leaders of Christianity. Mormons like Glenn Beck, others. Charismatics, Paula Dean. I'll go to the White House. It's holy ground. It sounded a little bit like her. Look at what's coming down the pipe.
That day, Thomas Crooks came within a quarter inch of destroying this country. And yet, a year and a half later, we still know almost nothing about him or why he did it. That's because, for some reason, the FBI, even the current FBI, doesn't want us to know.
Maybe the assassination was not something that we don't know the full story. So maybe it was staged. Maybe it was faked. Maybe it was some kind of message to him, although I don't understand that.
Now, it's been months since Tucker Carlson.
Can you guys, were you able to hear that when I was playing it? Because I had to turn my microphone off. I was afraid of getting an echo because it's not playing through the speakers like it normally does. It's playing through the computer laptop. I tried everything. So if it's not good audio, let me know on that too. I apologize for all of this helplessness, but I am helpless, nothing without the Lord. They faked the Butler thing. It seems so fake from the very beginning.
Carlson did a deep dive into President Donald Trump's would-be assassin, Thomas Crooks, and the FBI's lack of interest in, investigating it, including the motive. Now, more conservatives are beginning to question what exactly happened in Butler, Pennsylvania during the 2024 presidential election. Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of the more vocal individuals who's starting to ask questions. We'll get to her in a second, but first, Jake, your 2 cents.
First of all, there is no such thing as conspiracy theories. That's my new conclusion.
Yeah, same.
Okay, so what that is a term used by the media to make sure you don't challenge the government and their official story. Because the media is not in the business of news, they're in the business of propaganda for the powerful. So you just drop the conspiracy nonsense. It's a theory, okay? And is this particular theory an interesting one? Absolutely. And I'm a person who thought it was perfectly.
I never would have dreamed in a million years I would agree with Sink and the Young Turks. Hey, they're still big, pro-choice liberals. I get that. But they're not wrong about this. It's not conspiracy theories, it's conspiracies against you. and it's the president in on it with his staff because they're all blackmailed.
Be real, and I thought it was heroic what Trump did. I'm now definitely rethinking that based on some of the evidence we're going to show you.
Well, okay, first let me just say there is no like smoking gun, so don't like wait for that. I don't have a theory. Okay, my take on this is very strange. Okay, and I don't trust our government because our government has already lied about the suspect behind it, right? So Thomas Crooks was shot and killed at the scene, so there isn't going to be a trial or anything. But there was a big lie that was uncovered by Tucker Carlson in the special that he did on this incident.
It's always going to be Roman Catholics right now. And the people, the Gen Xers, are swarming to Rome. They love the Trinity. They love the charismatic aspect of the, I don't know, they love it all.
This case. So we'll get to that in just a minute. But first, while we still have trouble getting Trump to like shut up about the 2020 election, which he lost to Joe Biden, it is very strange that we never hear Trump ever mention Butler, Pennsylvania, ever. Or by the way, the second would-be assassin who was arrested near Mar-a-Lago. How come he never talks about any of this stuff? How come he doesn't demand investigation? Like he wants investigations as a freaking James Comey, but he doesn't want to know more about motives behind his would-be assassins?
No, look, guys. So it's really hard for us from the outside. He doesn't talk about it anymore. Okay, so if you don't think that's strange, now you're being weird. That's definitely strange. So that's point one.
So over the weekend, one of Trump's strongest supporters, who apparently no longer is a strong supporter, her name is Trisha Hope. She was actually a January 6th activist and a national delegate for Trump. She posted a lengthy post on X explaining her thought process on this whole situation because she finds it very strange. I'm gonna read exactly what she wrote verbatim. I was a longtime Trump supporter. I became a national delegate to make certain Trump was seated as the nominee. On the night Trump spoke at the RNC, he had the ear patch on. Remember, he had like a giant female hygiene product like attached to his ear. As Trump began to speak, he started with this. So many people have asked me what happened. Tell us what happened, please. And therefore, I will tell you exactly what happened, and you'll never hear it from me a second time because it's actually too painful to tell. So in regard to his statement there, Trisha Hope says, my first thought was how odd for him to begin this way. In my opinion, Trump made that statement to stop any further conversation about what happened. He gave us his official story, would only do it once, and that was the end of it. Now we all know no one loves Trump more than Trump, so this to me felt completely out of character.
Yeah, no question.
Okay.
So there's more videos. Keep going.
Following the inauguration, I found it odd that Trump wasn't going aggressively after those who allowed this to happen. He seemed to behave like it was no big deal. His Secret Service detail failed him miserably, failed him massively, allowed him to be shot, and they allowed that perfectly timed photo op to take place. Since the attempt on his life, Trump has shown no interest in investigating what really happened. He never mentions it. It's as if it never happened, except when he tells us he took a bullet for us. So,
is that crazy? Who believes that? Who believes it? I mean, what are these other guys yakking about?
Maybe it was faked. Maybe it was some kind of message to him, although I don't understand that because it almost, I don't get it. I don't get how close you would come. The top of the ear. But I think maybe it was staged. And I think now is the time to just come out and
or any of that, but I'm saying there's a lot of unanswered questions there, and there is enough data to at least say that there's a good chance that President Trump feels like he is under threat. We're not allowed to ask, basically, was there any linkage between what took place with Asif Merchant, who was recruited by the Iranians to come to America to recruit proxies to kill President Trump. The FBI put a confidential human source at him. All this is public now. This is all out there in the open. And he's arrested, and then 2 days later, a sniper takes a shot at President Trump.
He's going to show you the receipts, but I want to give you a little taste. F6.
In late September, we received a tip from a source. He told us he'd gained access to some of Thomas Crooks's accounts. He'd found these accounts by utilizing tools commonly used by private investigators. The key lead was Thomas Crooks's phone number. That was published in documents obtained by America First Legal. That phone number led our source to Thomas Crooks's primary email account, tmcrooks7@gmail.com. That in turn, he linked with more than a dozen other accounts. It turns out that Thomas Crooks was hardly an online ghost. He was active, and yet federal investigators lied and told us there was no trace of him online. Some of Crooks's accounts, like his Snapchat, appear to have been fully deactivated and completely taken out of use. Some of them may have been unused or cleared by federal officials during the investigation. We don't know, because the FBI wouldn't tell us. There is ample evidence to support the authenticity of these posts. Our source figured it out. So did we. But when we reached out directly to the FBI to ask why the Bureau hadn't shared any details from the account with the public, the FBI responded by questioning whether we could verify the authenticity of the account. We were confused by this, considering the authenticity is self-evident. And of course, the FBI would have known that since the day of the shooting.
Okay, now the last one. Number 5 is the photographers. Someone shepherding the photographers to just the right location. Now, normally when I see something like that, I go, really? Okay, I mean, are you sure? And there's an element of that here with the flag, which I'll tell you about. But we're gonna show you F7, the next video, because to me, this was also, I mean, this is number 5, guys, of incredibly strange things that happened. So let's watch. Okay, so this is the shoot. Now you see that guy on that just crossed your screen on the lower level. He crosses after the shooting. He's not panicking and running away. He was very calm earlier in the video. There's a long video, and he went to go get something. Now oh, look at that. He went to go get photographers. There he is again. You see, crouching down, and he's shepherding the photographers. And now you're about to see a second person that'll also come in to shepherd the photographers for just the right shot. So as soon as what happened was like the shooting happened, he was just the calmest man. And there he is, look. And here comes another woman now. Bring the photographers here. We need the exact picture. And it looks incredibly choreographed. Okay, but how did they know to choreograph it? In the middle of a shooting.
I'd be out of there,
Is your first reaction, oh, let me go get the photographers and let me bring them to just the right location where they're gonna be able to take a shot of the flag as well, and Trump holding up his fist. And I'm not at all worried about my life. And remember, guys, come here. No, not there, right here, just like we planned it. What is that? Now, some people have a
likely things that happened there. So, but I did say I have not had the time yet to reach out, which I'm going to do, to hear that story.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about it that just instantly strikes me as very odd, for whatever reason, that strikes me as very odd. And I don't know this, so I'll ask you the question. In that typical scenario, shouldn't they have done the trace on him first?
So they do the trace on the manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
Then it went to a gun store.
That he has his gun sent to.
hmm
Mhm.
And then they're supposed to trace through the same
It's dark, it's psychiatry, it's manipulative. You had used the term when we were discussing, which I think many people are familiar with, which is Darvo. Do you want to talk about what Darvo is in case they're not?
Well, yeah, this is something I just learned over the past few days is a DARVO, if I can remember properly, it stands for deny, attack, reverse, victim,
Victim and offender.
an offender. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the perpetrator denies what you're accusing him of. He attacks you, and then he reverses the roles of victim and accuser.
And when I say that we are going through this on a large scale, and it was exactly how my experience with Turning Point after. When you walked in tonight, I was on the phone with actually the president of the University of Georgia, and and this is for the Turning Point USA chapter, and there had just been this situation where Erica wasn't going because the crowd size, and she said that was it. It was the crowd size. We told them that it wasn't going to be a big crowd. We were concerned the entire time. We had communicated this to them that people didn't want to go. Conservatives didn't want to go because they don't like Erica. And they told us to keep going, keep going. And then Erica abandons that commitment in the last moment and they get on stage and they blame the world. It's like you didn't show up for your commitment. And now you're telling the world that she had death attacks or death threats. And that wasn't true. And so the students are resigning. She's resigning her post. And she said, exam the same.
But the scenario is you have a backpack, you have a rifle that fits in it, and it would not necessarily have to be a full AR. There are some other models where you can take the barrel off with different means, but they're not very popular. In the case of a fold AR, you could have the folded rifle in a backpack and another barrel system in it. And so
When you say it started with me, and you also used the word ritual, what do you mean by that?
well, the retooling prayer, he was going to do it on me first.
Okay.
And then,
So it's one by one, and he's going to retool what?
good question.
Yeah.
We'll
Okay.
we'll figure that out.
We'll
then.
figure that out.
Yeah. So, and of course, I didn't memorize the whole process, but recently I looked back on, there was a podcast that they did in 21, him and Eileen, where it described the process. I kind of forgot what the process was after this thing, but I looked back recently and, it all started to come back as like, oh yeah, he did exactly that.
Mm.
And is going to get judged in this circle of judgment. And so he asked the subject, me, you know, I'm gonna ask you a series of questions and you're just going to respond.
Hmm.
Whatever the first thing that comes to your head, just say it. Doesn't matter what it is. Don't think about it. Relax. Just say whatever the first thing that comes to your mind. And so he asked, he's commanding the demons at this point. And he asked, you know, what demon, what is, well, back up. He asked how many demons are assigned, and you just say a number. And so that's the instruction that he's giving me. You know, I'm going to ask how many demons are assigned.
Your weak spots.
Yep.
Now he knows and you at the end of that, because you're doing this and these people are strangers, you've instantly established an emotional connection with these people because you've shared with them something that you would not just share to a person that you met.
Right.
So he is, I would almost say,
And arrived at our Airbnb in Vegas the night of the day of the wedding, and I was just dressed in like jeans and my work boots and just a button-up shirt, and she had a pretty cheap, easy dress that she got. Look, it looked beautiful, but we just like this was a rush job. That's a embargo country, so I I mean I've exported guns by this point to many different countries, and I know the process, and it's not easy every time, anytime really. And I just knew that Haiti wasn't on that list, on the approved export list. So I was like, nah, I can't do that one because like Haiti's like the last place they're going to let me export guns, probably the last place. And so I said, you know, I suggest you don't do that with any other firearms either. Just, I'm assuming that he just doesn't know the export laws. Why am I assuming this? I don't know. But he's a high risk humanitarian abroad. He's been to all these other countries, done operations in. Hindsight 2020. Of course, he knew that you can't take guns and drop them off into Haiti.
Did you, and I'm sorry to cut you off here, but I have a question about that. The other countries he had visited, did he ever give you again the context? Because I'm just going in my own point of reference. My priest was like, yeah, and I did these.
Substance abuse with THC. So I drove up there, and you know, when I arrive, and I guess let me fill in the gap here. So again, spiritual mentor relationship. At this point, I'm off THC. I'm in the Bible, just studying the heck out of it. At the same time, I'm supposed to be pivoting my business to figure out how to survive in this new market. and a lot going on. And as I'm doing more research in the Bible, I'm also seeing things that don't look right. And so, and I'm particularly interested in at this time in deceptive Christianity. And so I come across some what I consider to be false spiritual leaders in the Christian quote unquote movement. And I'm telling Victor about and it was already clicking, like everything's clicking for me. I'm recognizing stuff at this point. And I look at it and it's like got all these frequencies that you can select for healing certain issues with the body or mental or whatever. And it's a sauna. You just get in it and turn to the light frequency you want and sit in there for a while. And in my mind, I'm going like, dang, that's new age. Like light frequencies to heal. Like, why are we doing this? Things are starting to click a little bit more. So again, I didn't reject it. And we went for another walk. And so we just continued talking about it. I remember one thing, you know, what I was wanting to do and me and my wife were wanting to do was be a part of the actual mission. Like in our minds, we were thinking, doing this and that. But, you know, he said he looked down like a puppy. Because he even admitted that he made
he
that
admitted
threat.
it, yeah.
And see, I just like blocked that out of my mind just then. Crazy. But look down like a puppy. Like, no, that's not me. I don't like to fight. I don't fight. But that was kind of a blue.
Yeah. Still kind of making you feel small.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you get out of there a day early, and what happens thereafter? You're kind of now realizing what this is, maybe kind of adjacent to this sort of NARS cult, NAR cult, or New Apostolic Reformation. Something.
No, I really didn't. I still thought in my mind that that Victor was just unaware all the way through this point, just unaware of what.
To the case number or the report number.
Yeah, and he didn't
Scribble
call
on a piece of
me.
paper.
Yeah, when the incident happened, I didn't know about it.
Oh.
But he and on July the 4th, it was stolen.
Mm-hmm.
Purchased it in June. We shipped it to his gun shop. In June, also late June. And on July 4th, it was stolen in Midland out of his vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And then he notified the Midland Police Department, took a report, serial number and a report number. And
thought it was very strange that a gas station wouldn't have cameras, and you had asked him about that, and what was the reason he
Well-
told that he didn't the cameras weren't facing or they didn't have footage? What was the
Yeah, I think it did have cameras, and he told me that he did go in and check, but they couldn't see the visual of it, I guess at the angle the vehicle was parked or wherever it was parked at. But it didn't tell me.
too much about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I struggled with that a little bit. I'm going to be honest. It's a gas station, wealthy area. I just felt that would not be too likely. And then also just that a lot of unlikely things that happened there. So, but I did say I have not had the time yet to reach out, which I'm going to do to hear that story.
Mhm.
There's something about it that just instantly strikes me as very odd. For whatever reason, that strikes me as very odd. And I don't know this, so I'll ask you the question. In that typical scenario, shouldn't they have done the trace on him first?
So they do the trace on the manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
Then it went to a gun store.
That he has his gun sent to.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And then they're supposed to do the same trace for the same serial to that gun store. And then that gun store would tell them, okay, we sold it to this person. Here's their phone number and address.
Did you call the gun store?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so that's something that could definitely be chased down. Okay, I'm definitely going to take a look into that. I do find that to be, as you did, this for the same reasons, just like, oh, there potentially could be more here. And I think the biggest theme and the one that's the most upsetting in listening to your story, the current that runs through all of this is this faux faith. And it feels like the entire world was given this retooling prayer, so to speak, after Charlie, based off of the pattern over 3 years, beginning in the same time frame that you're discussing in 2023. And she happens to have a proximity to a lot of pastors that have interesting pasts and presence and always a finger on trafficking charities. And I find that not to be coincidental. I don't find that to be coincidental. And I just don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible that everybody can be doing charity in the same way for orphanages and wanting to stomp out human trafficking. And the Jimmy barbecue story was interesting because of also Tim Ballard and Operation Underground. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I had interviewed him, had heard the story, totally fell for the story that he was helping these victims. And then he arrived in a massive scandal where people were saying, no, that's not actually what he was doing overseas. And so it's another piece that I need to put together. But there just sort of seems to be a lot of these connecting themes with, you know, my heart's in the right place. I'm doing charity. I'm doing this. This is the theme of the charity. I'm protecting orphanages. And I think that there potentially could be more here. And I think the biggest theme and the one that's the most upsetting in listening to your story, the current that runs through all of this is this faux faith. And it feels like the entire world was given this retooling prayer, so to speak, after Charlie died. I feel like we went through that, but publicly, where suddenly we're being told this is all God ordained, and this is who you have to follow, and this is who you need to listen to, and if you question this, you've got demons on you. And this is, I think, what was so compelling about your story, because it was a microcosm of what we have seen happen since Charlie passed away. And we have this Victor Marx connection. And I find the manner in which he dealt with you to be sort of the manner in which Turning Point, the stage, everything, they have dealt with us publicly. Like, this is what God has ordained and nobody should question this. And yet we all feel the darkness. Everyone, that collectively, the world feels a darkness there outside of the, little bubble of the mainstream media that's trying to conduct the retooling prayer on us. Yeah, I want to say that. I want to say that there is what you perceived in February, April, that faith is being manipulated and is not for light forces, it is for dark forces. People are going to feel it. And I felt so seen when I was reading your story and realizing what we're actually looking at here is dark psychiatry. This is dark. It's psychiatry. It's manipulative. You had used the manufactured yet.
No commercialization there. As far as the patent goes, I've never seen it before, but
he did secure the patent.
Yeah.
3 years it took, but he's got the patent for it.
I would say this. So the Fold AR has several unique features to it. One being that it can fold, obviously, and the other that is not so obvious is the quick change barrel system. And so with just a push of a pen, you can take the entire barrel system off and swap it with a different barrel system of a different length or caliber. And so in the case of the AR-15, the most common calibers are 5.56 or 223, same caliber there, and 300 blackout. So we sell proportionately 60 to 40, 60% the 5.56 and maybe 40% 300 blackout. And so it's very common. Being that the ballistics report of the shooting say 30 caliber, that doesn't necessarily mean 30-06. And so it could be a number of 30 caliber, which is the diameter, 0.30 inches.
It could be a distraction, but we've got all night. I got a bunch of stuff.
I do know that 300 blackout, especially subsonic, has a much higher probability of not going through than a 30-06. Now,
Can I ask what a subsonic is?
Subsonic is usually charged, always charged with a lesser burning powder.
Okay.
And so it'll travel ideally below the sound barrier, which is going to be around.
So literally subsonic sound.
Yeah.
Okay.
950 feet per second, plus or minus, depending on temperature, elevation, all that. And so I wasn't there, so I didn't hear the gunshot.
They don't build chips. They don't run models. They don't sell software. What they do is they sell power, massive amounts of power. Their entire model is very straightforward. Build the infrastructure that AI companies need and lease it to them. And that's what their model was from the beginning. They went all in on this. And they launched what they called Project Matador over in Texas. I believe Governor Abbott was one of the big backers of this company. The scale was huge initially, 11 gigawatts, later expanded to 17 gigawatts, a mix of natural.
Did he say gigawatt?
Gas, nuclear, and solar. It wasn't a side project. It was positioned as the largest AI data center campus in the world. By the way, please hit that subscribe button for me and get signed up for the newsletter. Link description below. I'm dropping the first legal traps module this afternoon called Loans Gone Wrong, which will go out to all the newsletter subscribers. The next monthly newsletter will also drop on May the 1st. So Fermi structured this deal like a REIT, which means they were going to build it, lease it, collect income, and distribute a portion of that income back to their shareholders. But here's the big catch. They needed to have tenants, sign up to commit to the project. And they don't have them. So that begs the obvious question. If AI demand is exploding like all the headlines are telling us it is, that it's urgent and that all these companies have huge demand for power, then how does a company like Fermi, offering exactly that at scale in Texas, fail to land even one anchor tenant?
Whoa, wait a minute. Now that's the time to let that sink in. I'm going to make sure my microphone's not turned off. You are looking at it. Zach back. Yeah, it was I fixed it for now. No tenants. 0 tenants. What are they going to do?
That's not a timing issue. That's a massive, major mismatch between demand and commitment. And here's the timeline for this company. In late 2025, Fermi went public at a valuation of around $12 billion. AI infrastructure narrative at its peak, right? And then this reality starts to show up. Back in December, a key customer that they thought they had signed up walked away from a $150 million deal. I did a video on that back in December, okay?
Statistically, $150 million doesn't register for $12 billion.
And this company now admits they still do not have an anchor tenant. So their stock started to collapse, okay? Now we fast forward to the story yesterday that came out. The CEO walks away, the CFO resigns. And the company confirms ongoing issues signing companies. So the stock dropped, like I said, over 20% yesterday. From its IPO, this stock is down 70%, folks.
So if anybody knows where the book Leges Angolorum Londonis Collectae may be, let me know. That could have some interesting information.
Oh, yeah. If you're one of these guys, well, so are the people that believe that King Arthur went there, the Atlanteans. You're in good company with wackos that don't know how to just stick with scripture.
And the Inventio Fortunata, which was a 14th century book that summarized earlier accounts of the Gestae Artur of a friar discovering the magnetic North Pole. So I had to know, what was the who supposedly traveled to the far north around 1360 on behalf of King Edward III? Now, who is this anonymous Franciscan friar? Well, there's a few speculations in history. It could be somebody named Nicholas of Lynn. Some historians, including
Could be Saint Nick of the Nicolaitans too.
story about the sun and the constellations. Some of the reasons for it would be the number 12. Arthur is famously credited with 12 great battles against the Saxons. This is often interpreted as the sun's journey through the 12 signs of the zodiac, or the 12 months of the year. The round table is argued is physical
Jason Jack, you're with these guys.
The age of Aries came to a climax. And I've already mentioned how Virgil connected
Oh yeah, these guys too.
him and his appearance on the world scene as a Messiah with the oracles of the Etruscans, who awaited such a Messiah towards the final age. And this final age was the final part of the age of Aries. So the climax period, he arose to the scene. So this is why, and it chart. Now we find exactly the same tradition that we find in Egypt, where from the earth god were born 8 gods. These 8 gods include 4 pairs for female goddesses and 4 gods. We find exactly the same equivalent in Sumer. So what we find is that this continuous tradition clearly includes within these circles and this group of families certain lineages that was through the
Serpent seed. I mean, that's bad. Click off.
Alarm bells for the Pentagon. Who knows? But there's definitely something very odd about the way Tamala Tsarnaev's case was handled. But most importantly, and I don't have answers to these questions, when he goes to Russia, we know this. We know that he was wiretapping members of his family who were part of his mother's relatives were part of an organization called Union of the Just. They weren't bomb throwers. They were fundraisers for terrorism. And the Union of the Just leader, Tamerlan, was, that's what you do when you go home and visit family, right? That you never met before. You wiretap them. But these wiretaps were sent back to the United States. We know that cousin that he was wiretapping got picked up immediately after Tamerlan left Russia. And we know that William Plotnikov, the guy who set off this warning in the first place, was tracked and killed during a firefight. And they did so with visas that they got from Ankara, Turkey. So right away, that was the CIA.
You mentioned that they're from Dagestan, but they're ethnic Chechens. They're
ethnic Chechens. Yep.
Okay, so that was part of it, right?
Yep, they're ethnic Chechens. They moved around all over the place, and I think they went back and forth. They had family members spread out everywhere, but they're Chechens. And I think that Graham Fuller, if you look at some of his writings, he had long believed in fighting Russia by using the Mujahideen. So he has these ties already to using Mujahideen, these young, angry Islamic kids, to fight back against the Russians. So it's an interesting tie that Graham Fuller's daughter was married to Ruslan Sarny, who was the brother of their dad. So right away you have a CIA character that comes into the mix. And then they moved into a house in Cambridge, Massachusetts that was owned by a defector who was a Russian studies professor at Harvard University, in another tie to Graham Fuller. And they settled into this rent-controlled apartment in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And at that time, they looked like all American kids. The Tamerlan was sort of a dandy dresser who hung around at the Euro Cafe on Boston's Newbury Street, now defunct. These kids really, I think, wanted to be American. Tamerlan obviously was an accomplished boxer who wanted to box for the United States Olympic team. He wasn't able to do that because he wasn't a citizen. So there was, a lot of, that's just like the backstory of how the brothers got into the country. Now, leading up, a restaurant on Boylston Street called the BPD, the Boston Police Department, and said, "Hey, we have this video. I think it could be of interest. It looks like the guys are hustling away from the marathon." And a Boston cop went and picked up that video, and that's the key video. So it's almost like they intentionally didn't pick up the video that was going to be the most useful in this case. I had a podcast, Mayhem, with Michelle McPhee, and I'm laughing because a friend of mine, there's a CIA former officer who teaches my book at Boston University, and he always tells his students, Mayhem is Michelle McPhee, which is not untrue. It's not untrue at all. But when you think about this, the BPD goes and picks up this video, and that's the key video that shows these guys in the seconds after they detonated these deadly blasts. But here is a big question. It brings other people into the mix. Anyone who has been to the Boston Marathon bombing to the Boston Marathon itself, the event, knows that it is impossible to move around. You can't just get in and out of that area, smoothly. So how did these guys, these two brothers, get out of this crime scene in 2 Whole Foods in a matter of minutes, which would be hard on the best of traffic days. But on this day, the entire area is on lockdown. It raises some, I think, serious questions that night. And that sparks a wild chase. They track the brothers. So they kill Sean Collier. They carjack a young Boston University student. They take his SUV Mercedes. They take him on a wild ride all over the place, pulling money out of ATMs. They go to a house on Dexter Ave in Watertown. We still don't know why. The carjacked young victim would tell police that they carried something out of a house at 89 Dexter Avenue and put it in the back of the SUV. That night, there was a wild shootout. Tamerlan is shot multiple times, 9 times, and then he is run over by his brother, who gets away in this missing SUV. Now, here brings up a big question when you talk about freezing out the cops. You know, Jahar was shot in the face. He's bleeding. So there is a blood trail. He is leaving bloody handprints on his way as he races away from the scene. I was getting text messages from sources saying, hey, we have the dogs on them. We're going to grab this guy. We have a blood trail. And then suddenly I got a...
I know. The Boston Marathon to me, though, because Sandy Hook, Boston Marathon, my son almost died in Afghanistan with what ended up being the whole Malaysian Flight 370 reason it went down, and it just keeps going. These are details, if you haven't studied, they're only now allowing it back on YouTube.
Other texts saying we've been pulled off. The FBI has shut down the scene, FBI only. So there was just so much that just pointed to malfeasance, disorganization. But what we do know for an absolute fact is that this guy was bleeding, left a blood trail, and somehow he still managed to get away.
And, the author, Michelle Gesson, concludes here that there's just no other explanation for what's happening at this point in the story other than a massive cover-up by the feds. Because the kid has, I guess, crashed the car, just pulled it over and got out and ran. So cops already know how fast a guy can run, especially if he's jumping fences or whatever, trying to hide and get away. He can only be so far away. They can just create a perimeter and block and sweep until you find the kid. That's easy to do. And instead
what do you got, Scott? Break it down. This is amazing. Listen to what they did. It's an experiment. Come on, people now. Smile on your brother.
Locked down millions and millions of people all over the place. They drove around. They called out every SWAT team to patrol up and down, pointing their guns at citizens looking out the window, which we have footage and still pictures of them terrorizing the entire population. Some old man walks outside and they completely accost him as though he must be some terrorist threat, or else why would he be outside? When they know good and well this old man doesn't have the first thing to do with these two Chechen terrorists, an FBI informant and his younger brother. And they essentially, it was almost like in Katrina, where they were like, let's see if we can go door to door seizing guns. We have a crisis. Let's get away with something here. So here they had a crisis. They knew this kid is within a few square blocks or a few square miles max. And they locked down everybody, just essentially as an experiment in totalitarianism. There's really something to see.
When you look in the book, there is a map. It's like a grid search. And there's, I spoke to many members of FBI, of the SWAT teams, the police SWAT teams that were sent out. And a good friend of mine, Jim Baglia, who was a former Waltham police sergeant who was on this elite unit, the North Shore Task Force, he was on the SWAT. And he said that they intentionally gave the SWAT teams a grid search, and the only place that was not on the search for these SWAT teams was the exact home where this guy, David Hennenberry, lived, where they found Jahar on the boat. And when they were finally pulling him out of this boat, and the only reason he didn't see it out, what was that?
I'm sorry, Michelle, you're saying the one thing that was excluded from their search was not just that block, but that one house?
No, it was that block. But
okay.
No, it's a suburban area, so it's not like you have building to building to building. It's like suburban houses. So it's a small little block where that house happened to be. And
okay, I'm sorry.
A lot of questions. It raised some questions for these guys because they were like, hold on a minute. We went door to door to door. And this is a frantic search. This is a guy who, murdered a police officer, killed 2 women, a little boy. This is a very desperate search. And they felt infuriated. Like, wait a minute, how did we miss this guy? He had a blood trail. By then they would just be misdirected. So Jim Baglia will tell you on the record that he was being misdirected from that boat.
Right. And now, so wait a minute, because we skipped a part, which was at the assassination of the cop. Oh, sorry, I'm very bad at producing this thing live, aren't I? At the time of the assassination of the cop, you write in your book that here we have a guy rob a 7-Eleven nearby in a way that it seems kind of absurd for different reasons. Like maybe there was something going on besides just a robbery here, and that in fact maybe the simplest explanation was that it was a distraction while the brothers were trying to accomplish something at MIT, such as, for example, possibly stealing more bomb material precursors or something like that, or some other business they had at MIT. And that then I believe you have in one of your books, the stepfather of the guy who is suspected for other reasons of potentially being maybe the primary bomb builder. The stepfather, I believe you say, identified his stepson from the footage of that robbery. So that would, seem to be one direct tie between this alleged, or at least let's say potential.
Malaysians had videotaped and documented a summit in Malaysia with Al Qaeda, where they were grooming on the hijackers. And a short time after that, those two of the participants in this Al Qaeda summit were able to land at LAX, where, according to a civil suit, the Saudi government was ready to prop them up and set them up in Southern California. So there are so many missteps when you look at this. That's why this reporting that you're doing, the reporting in the marathon, look, mistakes happen. Informants go bad. This happens all the time. It's not a slight. We need informants. This is an important part of doing business. Help you can get to track down the people that are responsible for those kinds of atrocities.
Okay, I see where I got that from now, and this still would make sense, right? I mean, hostile or not, because the story was, at least if I read it right, my citations are ABC News and the Boston Herald here, where they say that it was the jihad. In fact, this is even the headline in the Boston Herald. Jihadi told Russians about Tamerlane. So it was under interrogation by the Russians that Plotnikov revealed the name of Tamerlane to them. And then I guess they let him go. And then later the tables turned and they used Tamerlane as the informant to track down Plotnikov and kill him.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what I believe. Because remember, the day after this big raid in Utamesh, Tamerlane, in the words of Bill Keating, hot tails it out of Russia.
Without a passport. And they let him.
Right. And can you imagine, think about these two golden ticket. He keeps going down to this building, the federal building, and dealing with the DMV, like you pointed out, and then he gets pissed off. And by then, this is what happens. My grandfather used to say all the time, if you go to a barber shop enough, you're going to get a haircut. And this guy has spent the last 6 months listening to jihadi rhetoric in Russia. All he's doing is hanging around with these pro-jihad people in Russia for 6 months. He comes back and,
Oh, man. I don't know. Wrap it up.
Ken Starr, who took Bill Clinton down and led to his impeachment, is now palling around with Epstein and Bill Clinton. And Ken Starr, who's the Republican special prosecutor, is working with, allegedly, according to Epstein, Catherine Rumler, who just had to give up her job at Goldman Sachs, who was Obama's White House counsel. She also had a role in the Clinton White House. And then she writes to Epstein, I just got an award from John Brennan, the CIA director. Isn't that cool? For what? Why is a white shoe lawyer getting an award from the CIA?
Yeah, wow. CIA work. One last point here before I let you go, Michelle, which is that the great Nick Turse, who's the author of the book, Kill Anything That Moves about Vietnam, he also is the author of a book called The Terror Factory about the FBI. And it's about how in the earlier years of the terror wars, Al-Qaeda really got their dirty work done on September 11th, provoking the invasion of Afghanistan and then Iraq. And then it took a while for all the killing of the new wars to generate new terrorist attacks, like Orlando and Boston and the others. And so the FBI had to fake it. And so the FBI entrapped something like 300 nitwits into 300 fake plots just so that they could parade these guys.
Does everybody, I'm gonna double check, make sure my microphone is on and that you're hearing that. And ask you, what's your favorite, we got him moment where it found out later was, oops, we got to let him go because we entrapped him. 5, 4, 3, 2. Mine was the underwear bomber. That was the good one, right? The underwear bomber. You remember that one? They set him up. I guess he was half of what we used to be able to call C-tard, and framed him. But let's get serious. Let's do this about the Bible. And I'm going to keep trying to work this thing here. The hagiographies, Theron and his wife, they almost went to the North Pole. They were caught up when they first heard about Flat Earth Nation and everything else. And they stopped it. And now, although he doesn't like me because I've smoked the weed and he still and his wife are the Wheaton College graduate types, I'm praying for the guy, as I always have. Wait, where is that one? Give me a second here now. Ooh, momento. I knew things were going too good. I'm just going to go and hopefully I'll remember what Theron's channel is here in a minute. Something about Toad Housing it. It's with a T, right? QRS Toad. You ever hear that song from Toad the Wet Sprocket? There are sure a lot of THs, aren't there?
Neither knoweth any man the Father, save the Son, and he to whomsoever the Son will reveal him.
Okay, first, the deal was about, they get critique of the Trinity, some of these other things. Is this the one?
Strongly that, if that's what actually keeps.
I want to make sure I'm getting on the right one here. Where they're talking about hagiographies. Well, they didn't show me the ones in order. There it is. At first they get into, they really like the movie Wag the Dog and recommend it, which is probably, interesting. We're not going to look at much of that.
If you haven't ever watched the movie Wag the Dog.
But I am going to get into, let them talk about it a little bit, and segue into hagiographies. I covered them this morning.
Here being shot off and regrowing perfectly, except insanely stupid things. And they just keep going with it. When Hulk Hogan endorsed President Trump, I really thought that would help people. But I realized so many of them, it's impenetrable. Their brains are just, no, it's all real. No, it's all real. And I see that you can't sometimes get past that. I'm glad Trump's being such a character now that people are starting to wake up.
Hopefully. Even that premise that an actor who gets involved in something political is no longer acting. Like this is what they do. But they stopped when he got up, when what's his name? Hulk Hogan got up. He wasn't being an actor anymore. He really loved Trump. You know, like what's happening in our brains? But I know we have done it before too. It's just like crazy not to realize that actors are acting all the time. And they make fun of that in the movie too. The producer is like, I could have gone this way, becoming the president. Remember that?
Yeah. Well, and you know, they say people will weep, right, for their things, and they do that. They get us to weep. And
oh yeah, I wanted him to turn off the song because it's like it almost still works even though it doesn't work, but it's so poignant. The first one you played.
Yeah, I wonder how many people join the military after the courtesy of the red, white, and blue. Talks about how we stand up for this country and we fight for freedom. And if they only all understood the false pretenses they've been lured into the military under, and then they're like, oh, this is not what I signed up for. You know, speaking of military, a lot of different wars here and there. A friend of mine's got a son in the military, and he's always going to places. And you know what he tells me his son does?
Yeah, you said it. So
Did I already say it? They check into hotels, and they twiddle their thumbs, and then they come home. And again, like, can this guy now say, no, there's no war happening? No, he did his thing. He had his little sort of slice this big and went there. You know, this guy that gets shot down and rescued, people don't know whether that's true or not. They'd be like, no, this was a secret service. Only the 303 brigade knew about this one. And who's the 303? It's their guys, you know. It's just like the moon mission.
Who knows? Some of it they may even simulate, for all we know.
Yeah.
They may go drop a guy off and then go rescue him.
They just simulated the moon land, you know, the whole moon thing.
Right.
So
we stay on topic, Theron.
You know, like this fort, just, you know, out there in the middle of the bay near Portland, Casco Bay. You know, of course, that was just built for some war that never happened. But
this is where I get cynical and angry.
Okay, never mind. Well, it's a wonder to behold still. Even like I try not to think of it in the upsetting way.
No, it is a wonder.
And then just be like, wow, that's amazing, and enjoy it.
Right? No, it's a new song. It's inserted. Everyone's like, I've never heard this. But does anyone say, I've never heard this? This is a new song that they inserted into the Library of Congress. Or does everyone accept, cool, I've never heard this song. I love it.
So they produce the song and then they say, go insert this in the Library of Congress in 1937.
And then have a radio station play it.
Yeah.
Right. So they've created what most people would say is the Mandela effect, but it's not Mandela effect. It's them inserting this stuff. And I even thought with this movie, Wag the Dog, I was like, I've never heard of this in my life. All of a sudden, it's like, is it just there? They just created it, said it was made in 1997. I don't know, but they can do stuff like that. And I can't stand on any sort of say it was not made until today. You know, I couldn't do that. Who could? Could anyone dethrone that? And then would anyone dethrone that and say, no, this movie was made. This is actually so one-to-one with Trump. They're making it like.
Oh, I think it's just that they do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. Documents that sort of give us like, oh, look at this is proof of the little season. Look at how they're writing. It's opening a door to much more information that they can just.
Okay, this is what I wanted you to hear. That hot chocolate seems to be clogging up my throat.
He did this video that's got like 69,000 views. Okay, so he's big right off the start.
Yeah.
And in it, he talks a lot about hagiography and everyone's talking about it right now. And so I'll say my piece. There's no way to trust something like this. This makes no sense to me to just say all of a sudden they've been releasing maps, they've been releasing documents that sort of give us like, oh, look at this is proof of the little season. Look at how they're writing.
But they're releasing everything to Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens for the same reason, Theron. I hope you hear that.
It's opening a door to much more information that they can just dump down our throats. And if we start letting in, oh, hagiography, and look, this proves our case, we're done for. We're absolutely done for. We stand on one thing alone, the Bible and what Jesus says. We say, that's it. Everything else is up for grabs in the little season. The second thing that I cannot stand and I hate, and all of them do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm literally the only one, me and Jacob Lott, Scott Simon, King James Bible. They do not answer. They like skip over this like question. I just want to I wish I could just like tie them to a chair and make them answer a question. It's like, what freaking language did they speak during the millennial reign? Like, answer me that. Answer, what language did they speak? How are they going back to Hebrew? Because this guy would fillet the King James Bible, say, hey, this wasn't in there. This was a translation. This was different. I go, what language did they live through? And where did English come from? How did the language thing come about? They all skip over that. They all say English is evil, that King James is corrupt. And
a lot of them, that's their goal, is to
Take
make
away.
it so that
The King James is corrupt. Now, to answer his question, what language did they speak when they ran for the hills and begged the mountains to cover them from the raft that was melting the mountains? Well, they probably spoke some form of Greek or Aramaic, a lot of them, because the Bible was written in that. The Greeks had been warned by the Babylonians and the Persians and the Medes, go to Jerusalem if you want the real, the only God, the true God. So the Gentiles were flowing to Jerusalem. And we know it was a worldwide event. We know the gospel was preached to every creature. So is he going back? Is Theron been doing a KJV only sneak attack?
there is no bedrock.
Right.
And so you just keep unraveling until it all falls through your fingers and you have no faith.
And I just can't get a straight answer about so let's say the end of the millennial reign, why are there so many English speakers all of a sudden? And did Satan come out and did he release English and release the King James Bible? Is that what their goal is? I'd just like to know that.
Don't you think that's what the Freemasons and the Rosicrucians would do? Because the white people are 4% of the world, and yet they held all the power in the petrodollar, the colonialisms, and the slaves. We're going to have to get off the fact that we're the good guys, we're the smart guys. Theron, we're the patsies.
Okay. English is the satanic language. When they came up on the breath of the earth, you're speaking a satanic language right now. I'd love to just sort of hear that exposed, because I've never heard people say that either.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to know.
Right. People don't say that. You're making up an argument. People don't say English is any more satanic than any of the other Esperanto or anything else. You're making up an argument, Theron. You had me and you lost me.
We can glean about air travel and their ornate, their water features. There was opulent. That's what we can glean.
And it's still just a gleaning among.
And then since then we're going downhill, and I had to go ahead.
Well, with the English language, back to that for a second. So many things we're sort of programmed to think they just happened. It's like evolutionary theory applied everywhere. So if you really try to get someone to force you to say, what is English? Where did it come from? And why is it dominant all over this plane? They have very silly answers from textbooks that don't really answer it, and nobody cares. It's
Right.
just like, it just happened over time.
And this is where these slimy people, they combine this evolution of language with, we also don't believe in that time existing.
Right.
And I'm like, well, how can you have them both? Like, how can you even have hagiography when some of these time frames are more than we even have between the end of the millennial reign and now?
And when information is so rapidly manipulated that we can see in our own lives, I always go back to like, what kind of COVID narrative are you going to read, and who wrote that, and what did they say? Because it's going to be different from our experience. And then we're going to go back so many years and trust how they worded it.
I'm more and more convinced that the little season has not been even 249 years like I had thought. I think 1776.
All right, from the very beginning. Let's go back to the very start. That would have been about 2015. These things are making themselves known to me. Am I sharing the screen? Here it is. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel, when you see it in the holy place, we can assume they're about to take down every stone. And then God is going to judge them all. But they're first going to perform a sacrifice. And then that would never be able to, you couldn't do another offering in a place where an unclean animal was without a prophet to cleanse it, and they're all dead. And this is the one, his words are not going to pass away. Nobody knew what time it was going to be. So we have Daniel. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. But Daniel shut up the words and sealed the book until the end of time. Seal the book until the end. When is the end? We're going to have to go to Hebrews. Chapter 20. And we'll go down to verse 11. Then I saw a great white throne and him who was seated on it. It was Jesus. From his presence, earth and sky fled away, and no place was found for them. I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and the books were opened. Then another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged by what was written in the books, according to, King James says, works, what they had done. All the people that died in the sea, dead. The sea gave up its dead. Death and Hades gave up the dead who were in them. Looks like the end. Death and Hades get thrown into the lake of fire. Second death. But not for everyone. It's only for their people who haven't had their name blotted out of the book of life. Now, the reason I teach this is The stones were crying out, and I was reading the Bible in a new way. And I saw it, here comes the end of the whole big buildup, right? The fall of Babylon. Jesus is going to get him, you mighty city, you're going down. Rome doesn't know what's about to hit him. Loud voice, hallelujah, salvation and glory, power belong to our God. Who is our God? Well, the 24 elders in heaven know. Amen, hallelujah. Praise our God, all you servants who fear him, great and small. It's Jesus on the white horse. Blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. The one sitting on it was faithful and true, that white horse. It was time. He came in righteousness, judges and make war. He will rule them with a rod of iron because he has to. He knows that there's going to be wheat and tares, wolves in sheep clothing who ran to the mountains. But he came now to end it, gather them for the great supper. The beast was captured. The false prophet was captured. They're the ones who in the presence had done signs by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshiped its image. These two were thrown alive into the lake that burns forever, lake of fire, burns with sulfur. That says only those two, because in the same vision, remember, there's no chapter break. Stick with me. He keeps seeing things. He goes, oh, then I noticed there's an angel coming down from heaven. He's going into the great abyss. Nothing about the North Pole and hagiographies. The only time I can think of where they want to make sure, it's 4 times. 3 is unusual. 4, I think, is unheard of. Who does he grab now? The dragon, that ancient serpent, who is the devil, Satan, bound him for 1,000 years. In the Greek, Celia. You have to know how important numbers were to them. They had a word that meant 10 times 10 times 10. You know it as 10 cubed. 10 times 10 is 100. 10 times 100 is 1,000. It has to be exact. That was the golden age's limit. That was Satan's prison sentence. So he could deceive the nations no longer, that he must be released. He gets released. We'll talk, this is another whole show. He gets released. Satan comes out, reforms the nations. That takes a while. I'll explain how long. He gathered them for battle. He's going to go find the camp of the saints. I've shown you that's barracks, that's castles, that's places where people used to live, and now we're going to find them and clean them up. And fire came down from heaven and consumed Gog and Magog. Well, we have the example in the book of Daniel of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Hananiah, those guys. It is told, you remember Matthew 24, it's going to be talking about Daniel. Okay, here's the 1,000 years. They added 1,000 years. Don't even worry about it. There's 1,000 years. They're in jail. Satan gets loosed. And so the total for the deal is there's going to be a break. There's 290 days after the abomination that made it desolate. That's the same week, probably month. There were, let's sacrifice this animal and desecrate it so that, it's the time where the regular burnt offering is no more. You can't use it. And they're about to tear down every stone and then get covered by the Sahara Desert, probably, leaving us with this clue. Why 290? Why 335 days until the end? Everything's sealed up until the end. He's going to die and stand in the allotted place at the end. He's not going to be a part of that blessed first resurrection. He's one of those guys that is asleep, which means he's dead. But when you're dead, you don't know it. And all you remember is remembering. And then you wake up from waking up and you're at the great white throne. And if you're Daniel, you're going, I think it looks pretty good for me. Yeah, right. It was. What's the 290? If you take 290, and it's the day year, everybody uses day years in Daniel for good reason. It's a perfect example of the time to use it. It doesn't say morning and evening. It says, the days. It means years. If you go back from 9/11, which was the big setup that everything that's being exposed, even 9/11, Sandy Hook, Boston Marathon, Ruby Ridge, Waco, everything is being exposed right now as a lie of the government, because the petrodollar and our country is going to be messed over, because there's going to be, from 9/11, if you take back 9/11 and go back, that makes 1711. That means they're using the Gregorian calendar. We have to. You had 45 years to 9/11, and it's 2046. Now, in 2038, there's going to be the Linux epoch. For a while, we might have a little sense of, after the EMPs and the cities burn, those of you who are safe, we may have a respite until 2038 when there's the Linux epoch. But every one of these things are being exposed now. And they're all true. I mean, the Q, anonymous memes, QAnon, Patriots, free energy, Star Wars, tribunals, occult sacrifices at CERN. It's all coming true. Where's the flat earth? Where's the golden age past? This is only part of it. Puma Punku, you know these things. Montauk, pyramids, Area 51. Is that the best map you guys have on this? I thought I was going to the great map and killing the two birds with one stone thing. It turns out it didn't even show the whole map. Look at this one. Antarctica, Nazi breakaway group. The grand experiment. All of these are being proven now for a reason to go, we faked it. India is the greatest. China is the greatest. The countries that have billions. And they're going like, we don't need the petrodollar anymore because we're the ones selling heroin now, bitches. Something like that. So get ready to run, unless you want to fight the robot dogs, which I don't. It's going to happen. It's a matter of when, because this is a judgment. You got an orphan trained brain. Your parents or grandparents were either willingly or unwillingly in on it, used as cattle themselves to put their children in front of a desk where the teacher would say, look at the globe. Everywhere, not only in white world, everywhere. Evolution, spiritualism, Blavatskyism, Nazism, eugenics, all covered up because no, we're evolving to LGBTQ plus. No, we're not. It's a flat earth nation. The golden age is past because the mud flood was Armageddon. Me and my friends are never going to tell you anything else because we know we're called, chosen, elect, predestined to have seemed like a good idea to us to be on our knees believing that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. Because to be born again, to make that metaphor work, you didn't know when you were going to be born. You didn't know who your parents were going to be, how smart you were going to be. You didn't know diddly. And when you're born of the Spirit, you slowly change to that point of where you're on your knees. The things you used to love, you hate. The things you used to hate, you love. You want a family. You want to please God. You want to be a servant. And when you're born by the Spirit, that's what happens. Because you've been adopted, called. Many are called, few are chosen. How do you know you're chosen? You die in faith. It's the only way. Amen. Hallelujah. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Nakame. Adios. I was telling somebody today, she was like, how come you stay so confident? It's so bad right now. And I said, well, I've done many things to seek the Spirit, and from praying and fasting, the mushrooms that are better than anything scientifically at curing what they call that post-traumatic stress. I've done that. And every time I go to the Spirit, I don't see evil, bad people. I'm welcomed. I'm the Paco. It's hard, but it's like John the Baptist or John the Apostle, just somebody that Jesus loves. And yeah, that's why I get spanked extra hard unless I told the lie. And believe me, Daydream, yeah, that hurt. It was a privilege. Anyway, that's a new way I'm saying goodbye from the border of Southern Colorado and New Mexico.